Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was halfway through my coffee when my father said it. "She's just a contract analyst," he told the room, flicking his hand like he was brushing lint off his suit. "Good with data, not involved in negotiations. My name is Kara. I'm 41. I live in Alexandria, Virginia." And at that exact moment, I was standing in the back of a gold-drenched conference room in Houston, pretending not to feel the heat crawling up my neck. The worst part? He didn't even look at me when he said it. Just kept talking to the group of international delegates like I wasn't even there. Half of them didn't know I was his daughter. The other half just assumed I'd screwed something up. I hadn't. I was the reason our firm even got invited to the summit. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I stood there trying not to let it show. Not the embarrassment, not the fury. One of the foreign executives, tall, clean-cut, calm, tilted his head. His name tag read Dahir Bashir, CEO of some oil conglomerate out of the Gulf. He smiled, polite and unreadable. Then he started speaking. It wasn't modern standard Arabic. It wasn't even Gulf Arabic. It was a Bedouin-rooted dialect I hadn't heard out loud in nearly 10 years. Most people in that room didn't understand a word, including the translators. The system stalled. Earpieces buzzed with static. Delegates exchanged glances. My father looked annoyed, but I understood every word. "This house forgets the wolves that once guarded it," Bashir said calmly. "Now they dress sheep as gatekeepers and expect silence." He was testing the room. No, warning it. I looked around. No one was reacting. They didn't get it. My heart started hammering, not fear, anger. I stepped forward. I didn't wait to be asked. I didn't look at my father. "Your warning is heard," I said in his dialect, clear and direct, "but this house remembers more than you think." Every head turned. Every translator froze. Bashir's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Then he gave a single nod, the kind that means something behind closed doors. I knew the gesture. I'd seen it before, years ago, in a very different desert. The room went dead quiet. My father stared at me like he'd never seen me before, and I stared right back. I didn't need a badge or a title. I had the language, the memory, the leverage. I walked straight toward the front table and stopped beside Bashir's seat. He pulled out the chair next to him without a word, and I sat. As soon as I sat, the summit moderator stepped up like nothing unusual had happened. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. 5 minutes later, a man in a dark suit with a State Department badge leaned down beside me and murmured, "Ma'am, if you'll follow me." I stood without looking at my father. The man walked ahead, brisk but calm, through a maze of hallways beneath the conference floor. No badge swipes, no chatter. We passed 3 doors before he stopped at an unmarked one, tapped once, and opened it. Inside, the lights were low. The walls were bare, 1 table, 2 chairs, and Dahir Bashir. He stood when I entered and gave a small nod. Not polite, not forced. Familiar. The door shut behind me. He motioned to the chair across from him. "Kara Langdon, thank you for coming." I sat, silent, trying to read his face. Calm, deliberate, not overly warm, but alert. Like a man who never once stopped calculating. "I won't waste your time," he said, opening a folder and sliding something toward me. It was a photo. Grainy. Desert background. Blown out sky. 4 men in tactical gear standing near a white SUV. Off to the side, barely visible behind a comms vehicle. Me. Younger, exhausted, face turned away from the camera. I felt my stomach drop. "I was there," he said. "Juba oil field, spring of '09. 12 hostages, 9 Americans, 3 locals. You came in with the second team. You weren't on any roster." I blinked. "That mission was sealed, classified. You shouldn't—" "I remember you," he said, cutting me off. "Not your name, not then. Just the girl who walked into a tent full of armed men and told them their own grandmother would be ashamed." That hit me like a slap. I hadn't thought about that line in years. I'd said it in their dialect, low, even, quiet enough to land. "You calmed them," he said. "No one else could even understand what they were shouting. The CIA offered money. You offered memory. That's what saved lives." I stared at the photo. I hadn't seen it before. That entire week had been scrubbed from every record I could access. "How'd you even find this?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and set it gently in front of me. "Handwritten, my first name only." I opened it. Inside, a folded slip of paper with a single GPS coordinate, Northern Africa. No label, no legend. And beneath that, 6 words in the same dialect we'd just spoken. We remember. We need you again. I read it twice. My mouth was dry. Why now? Because the house is cracking, he said quietly, and you know where the fault lines are. I looked up. And you think I'll just jump back in? I think you never left, he said. They tried to bury you under contract titles and clearances, but you don't belong to them. I tucked the note back into the envelope and slid it into my coat. This whole thing, your speech, the translators failing, was that staged? He smiled just slightly. I knew they'd fail. I counted on it. I exhaled through my nose, leaned back in the chair. So this was a test? No, he said. This was a reminder. He stood. The door behind me clicked open. The same liaison waited silently in the hall. Use the coordinates or don't, Bashir said, his voice even. But don't pretend you don't remember what matters. I looked at the envelope again. Felt the weight of it, not heavy, but impossible to ignore. Bashir walked past me and disappeared into the hallway. I stood and followed, but the liaison turned me the opposite direction, back toward the noise, the crowd, the version of me that wore a badge and kept quiet. But that version felt about 1 second from vanishing. I didn't go back to the floor after the meeting. I told the liaison I needed air, stepped outside, and kept walking until I hit the edge of the parking lot. Asphalt radiated heat through my boots. I slid into the back seat of my rental, shut the door, and locked it. Then I pulled out the envelope again. Same coordinates, same message. But now I saw the thickness behind the folded note. I peeled the back seam open. Inside was a second paper sleeve, labeled in neat block letters. Tunisia. Contract Archive. Ice Onisibinyon. My throat went dry. I'd seen that label before. 3 years ago, I was working a mid-level compliance audit on a fuel logistics contract outside Tunis. Routine stuff. I was supposed to review routing protocols and make sure the vendors weren't inflating miles or double billing fuel. The internal AI flagged a dozen voice clips. Low confidence, foreign language. Non-relevant dialect, the system tagged. I almost skipped them. But something sounded off. Rhythm, stress patterns, word stacking. I isolated one clip and looped it. Took me 10 seconds to recognize it. It wasn't Arabic, not exactly. It was an offshoot of a Southern Berber dialect so old it barely had a written form. I hadn't heard it since a field op back in '05, when a local translator taught it to me in exchange for peanut butter. The system marked it as garbage. I marked it for escalation. I translated the call line by line. It described a cargo transfer, marked as medical but included route names only used by oil shipments. They referenced 3 names. 1 regional official, 1 contract manager, and 1 offshore account. The pieces clicked faster than I wanted them to. It was a payoff chain. Bribes disguised as logistics costs, routed through falsified maintenance invoices. I filed a Level 2 irregularity report, attached the audio, my notes, and the raw transcript, used the secure channel. 2 days later, the report vanished from my terminal. Not rejected, not closed, just gone. No ticket, no receipt, no digital trace. When I asked my supervisor, he shrugged and said, "Might have been a system purge. We've had storage issues." I knew it was bullshit. I let it go, or told myself I did. Now in the rental car, I pulled the new sleeve open. Inside was a slim flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop and waited. The audio file loaded instantly. Same voice, same phrases, same timestamp. Then I opened the metadata. There it was. My original digital signature, embedded in the report file. It had been copied, not deleted, archived, off-chain. Someone high up had kept it. Someone had known I found the leak. And instead of burying the report, they'd buried me. I leaned back against the seat and stared out the windshield. Sweat crept down my back, not from heat. The file had been sealed for 3 years. My signature was still there, like a fingerprint on a weapon no one thought would be found again. I played the audio again, slower. The voice said, "The money goes east, the questions go quiet." 3 voices later, one phrase stuck out. "Don't mention the sister. She listens." That wasn't coincidence. That was warning. My jaw locked. I ejected the drive and slid it into my inside pocket. This wasn't just about logistics fraud. They'd known I was listening back then. And someone wanted me listening again now. I started the car, not to leave, just to hear the engine running. I didn't trust silence anymore. I left Houston that night. No dinner, no calls, no debrief. Just booked the first seat out and landed in DC with nothing but that envelope and a gut full of unease. By noon the next day, I got the email. No subject line, no sender tag. Just a single line. Suite 003, Sublevel 1, 3:15 p.m. No directions, no HR notice, no formal meeting request. That's how I knew it wasn't optional. I showed my badge at the front desk of our downtown office, walked through security, and hit the service elevator. The button for Sublevel 1 didn't even light up. The badge reader turned green without a beep. The doors opened into silence. Gray walls, concrete floor, no windows. One man waited outside the only room down the hallway. Thin, tired eyes. I didn't recognize him. He nodded once, then opened the door. Inside were 5 people seated at a narrow table. No nameplates, no laptops. Just folders. One screen on the wall. No one smiled. "Ms. Langdon," the man at the end said. "Thank you for joining us." I sat. No handshake. No small talk. Without warning, the screen lit up. It was my Tunisia report. Original file ID, voice transcript, attached metadata. But now it looked different. Full of annotations in red, sections blacked out, some reworded entirely. I counted 6 lines in Arabic handwriting layered between the margins. My hands curled into fists under the table. The woman beside him leaned forward. This was recovered from a non-domestic archive. Off-grid storage. The signature matches yours. I kept my face still. The man spoke again. Recovered by a third-party security consultant. No one said his name, but we all knew. They let the words hang for a beat. "You flagged the bribery channel 3 years ago," the woman continued. "Your linguistic analysis was, let's say, beyond your pay grade." I didn't respond. She tapped the screen once. It shifted to a map, lines stretching from Tunisia, across Europe, into the Gulf. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. "No," I said flatly. They didn't believe me, but they didn't press it. The man leaned back. "We're expanding the advisory risk group. Quietly, overseas focus. You'd report directly to the oversight chair." "And do what exactly?" "Listen," he said. "Flag irregularities before they surface. Pre-incident intervention." It was a cover role, high clearance, no public credit, total deniability. And they were offering it to me like a consolation prize. "Why me?" I asked. The woman looked at me evenly. "Because you listened when no one else did, and because someone asked for you by name." My pulse didn't move, but something in my chest twisted. They weren't rewarding me, they were containing me. And I let them keep talking while I sat there and said nothing. Not yes, not number, just silence. Like I'd been trained to do, like I'd learned to do. The man slid a folder across the table. "Take your time, we'll expect an answer by end of week." I stood. "Not a problem." They didn't walk me out. Back in the hallway, I stared at the empty concrete as the door clicked shut behind me. I didn't open the folder, didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. They wanted a ghost, a listener, a watcher with no voice. And somewhere along the way, that's exactly who I'd become. Not because I was scared, because silence had become my weapon, and they still hadn't figured out who it was aimed at. I rode the elevator back up in silence, no folder in hand, just the weight of everything they didn't say. And all I could think about was Mitchell, my brother, the golden son, the future my father actually wanted. He was a straight arrow from day one. Ivy League, law school, State Department. By 29, he was already sitting at treaty tables. And every time he stepped on a podium, Dad stood behind him like a proud damn statue. Me? I joined a private military contractor right out of college. Refused to go to law school. Turned down every appropriate role. Dad didn't speak to me for 2 years after that. When he finally did, it was through a Christmas card. No note, just his name and my brother's photo inside. Mitchell and I weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. He didn't pick sides, didn't have to. He was the side. The last time I saw him before things went sideways was at a policy dinner in Arlington. He smiled through the whole thing, introduced me to people like I was just visiting from some tax office in Delaware. What nobody said out loud back then was this: Mitchell had screwed up. Bad. He'd reviewed a defense logistics contract in Qatar, missed a flagged clause tied to subcontractor liability. A month later, Two civilian drivers were ambushed because the GPS load schedule had been rerouted and left exposed. Both were killed. Bodies burned. Nothing salvageable. It should have been his career-ending moment, but it wasn't, because Dad made it disappear. He had friends still, inside agencies, inside press circles, inside committees that didn't even publish names. By the time the story surfaced, the report blamed intelligence failure. Mitchell's name was never mentioned. I knew the truth. He called me 3 days after it happened, voice wrecked, pacing through some hotel hallway in Brussels. "I missed it," he said. "I missed it, and they died." And I told him straight, "I know, but I didn't tear into him. I didn't weaponize it. I forgave him, because I understood what it meant to carry a mistake like that. The thing is, Dad never forgave me. Not for that mission in '09, not for showing up in classified reports without his permission, not for choosing the dirt and dialects over briefcases and Capitol Hill. Even when I saved lives, he never said a word. But Mitchell, he got handshakes and interviews, speaking panels and state-sponsored praise. Even after the screw-up, they gave him more. That was the Langdon legacy. Power, not precision. Appearance, not accountability. And I didn't fit the shape of it. I'd spent most of my life trying to prove something to a man who only saw value when it mirrored his own. But I wasn't a mirror. I was the one standing behind the tent, off the camera, using the right words while everyone else shouted in the wrong language. I was the one they forgot, until it served them not to. And now that I was back in the system, sliding between meetings and unmarked rooms, I saw it clearly. He never saw me. Only the version he could explain at a fundraiser. Only the daughter who didn't obey. And Mitchell? I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because I knew he never asked to carry Dad's dream either. He just wore it better than I did. That wasn't strength. That was survival. And I was done surviving for someone else's legacy. 2 days later, a white envelope showed up at my door. No courier, no tracking. Just slipped through the mail slot like it was junk. But the seal on the back wasn't junk. Gold foil. Department of Energy and International Affairs. I stared at it for a second, then carried it to the kitchen. No coffee, no distractions. I slit the envelope open. Inside was a formal invitation, covert placement offer into a multi-agency intelligence cell embedded within the DOE's International Operations Branch. Black ink, clean language, no fluff. Final paragraph read, "Endorsed for accelerated clearance processing by Secretary Langdon." I read that line again, endorsed, by my father. My first thought, damage control. My second, guilt. And my third, maybe the only honest one, was why now? I pulled the rest of the contents out. Beneath the letter was a smaller card. Handwritten, not typed, not printed. Real ink, real pen. I recognized the handwriting before I read the words. "Forgive my blindness. I didn't see you standing, but he did. No name, no signature. But it didn't need one. I folded it back up fast. Slid it under the rest of the papers like it had burned me. The whole kitchen felt smaller. I stood at the sink, looking out the window at my neighbor's porch light blinking on and off, and tried to picture what he thought this would do. That I'd read a few soft words and just forget the last 20 years. He watched Mitchell stumble and still backed him. He watched me stand in flames and looked away. But now, after all the sealed rooms, after Bashir dragged my name back into the open, now he wanted to see me. I didn't know if the offer was a thank you, a setup, or a leash. But I couldn't ignore it. Not because of him, because of what it meant. Someone wanted me in a seat where things moved before they hit paper. Not a back room, not a contract, not a cleanup crew. Real access, real decisions. And that meant someone still believed I could see what others missed. I laid the letter flat on the counter and read it again. Not once did it say why I was chosen. But it didn't have to. Bashir's note, the buried Tunisia file, the redacted comments, they all pointed to the same truth. This wasn't a promotion, it was a pivot. And it started with a signature I didn't ask for. The card stayed on the counter all day. I didn't text him, didn't call, didn't say a word. That night, I slid the note into the back of an old passport folder I kept in my safe. I didn't lock it. Just closed the lid and walked away. He said he didn't see me. Fine, but he saw me now. And maybe that was the problem. The office wasn't labeled on any public map, just a matte gray building off K Street with tinted glass and zero branding. Inside, everything was quiet, secure, cold. They called it a government-linked private firm, which really meant not officially federal, but with enough clearance to sink a small nation. My badge scanned, but my access didn't work right. First day, my login froze 5 times. Second day, files I'd been cleared for blinked out mid-search. Third day, someone accidentally downgraded my clearance by 2 levels. Not a single apology. Just tech support pretending it was a glitch. It wasn't. Someone was testing how long I'd wait before making noise. I didn't. I dug deeper. Every system had shadow files. Back-end junk they forgot to lock down. I knew where to look. By day 5, I found it buried under Archived Financial Instruments, West Africa Holdings. Wrong continent, wrong title. Exactly where they'd hide something. The file wasn't even large. 6 pages, memo format, unclassified. But the moment I opened it, my pulse jumped. Outbound transfer, $1.8 million US. Routing origin, Zurich. Final account, Amman. Code, TRX-014-B2. That code, TRX-014-B2, was the same one attached to my Tunisia file. Same ghost signature, same money trail, the same rot. I scanned further down the page. Recipient listed as Al Dinar Regional Development Forum. A line below, affiliated entity, North Atlantic Governance Initiative. I stopped cold. That was a think tank. Mitchell's think tank. He'd co-founded it 2 years ago, pushed it as a nonpartisan solutions network for energy policy in conflict zones. Got a nice write-up in The Hill, a panel spot at the World Energy Congress. I'd brushed it off as another polished career booster, but now his name sat 2 inches from a flagged wire transfer. I looked again. His name wasn't on the memo, not directly, but the board members, the affiliated consultants, the registered P.O. box in Arlington, it all screamed Langdon. And my father's influence was everywhere, hidden but familiar. The formatting, the approval language, the phrases used to deflect liability. It was his playbook, just unsigned. Same machine, different face. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a new scheme. It was the same one I'd tried to expose 3 years ago. Still active, still paying out, and still protected. I leaned back in the chair, shut my eyes for half a second, and let the anger settle. They didn't just bury my report. They kept the channel open. They scaled it. And now Mitchell's fingerprints were on the valve. For a second, I thought about deleting the file. Walking away, pretending I hadn't seen it. That would have been easier. But that was the old version of me. The one they taught to wait, stay quiet, follow the line. I wasn't that anymore. And they had their legacy. I had the truth. And this time, I wasn't going to whisper it. I was going to drag it out by the throat. I didn't call ahead, didn't warn him I was coming. Just walked through security, nodded at the receptionist like I'd done it 100 times, and rode the elevator up to the 15th floor. Langdon Energy Advisors, Arlington. His name etched in the glass. I still remembered where he kept the blinds drawn to keep the light off his frame degree. The office hadn't changed. Polished, efficient, cold. He was at his desk, reading from a printed folder. Didn't look up when I walked in. "You know how to knock," he said. "I'm done knocking." He glanced up. I dropped the Zurich memo on his desk. He didn't touch it. "What is this?" "You already know." A pause. Then he shifted in his chair. Slight, but I caught it. "Where did you get it?" I ignored the question. Was Mitchell involved? Did he know? He sighed. Long, heavy, theatrical. "You came here to start a war?" "I came here to get an answer." He finally picked up the paper, scanned it once, then set it down like it was some old tax form. Mitchell didn't write the routing. He didn't handle the funds directly. "That's not what I asked." He hesitated, looked straight at me. "He was briefed." I nodded once. "So you knew he was tied to it. You buried it anyway." "For national interest," he said, like it was a full sentence. I felt my jaw lock. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that mattered at the time." "No," I snapped. "It's the only one that kept his name off the report. And yours." His hands folded calmly on the desk. "You don't understand what was at stake." "I understand exactly what was at stake. 2 men in Tunisia, civilian contracts in conflict zones. This wasn't policy, it was profit." His voice dropped low. "You think exposure fixes this? You think dragging Mitchell's name through a federal investigation makes the world safer?" "I think silence doesn't preserve peace," I said. "It just buys delay." His face tightened. The old senator mask slipped just a bit. I could see the exhaustion behind it. You push this forward, Kara, and you will not just bring down your brother. You'll dismantle everything we've built. Our legacy, our credibility. I cut him off. Your legacy. That landed hard. I stepped closer. I don't care about your dinners, your friends, your panels, your press clips. I care about the truth. He sat back, staring like he was trying to measure how far gone I was. Like maybe there was still time to reel me in. You've always been good at finding things, he said, but this isn't a field op. This is a family. Families don't bury bodies to keep their names clean. He didn't flinch. I picked up the memo, folded it once, slow and deliberate. I'm going to follow this. I figured you would. I turned to leave. But before I reached the door, he said it. Calm, quiet, final. Whatever you choose next, make sure it's not vengeance. I stopped with my hand on the handle. I didn't turn around, didn't answer, just opened the door and walked out. By the time I stepped out of my father's office, I already knew what I was going to do. I didn't go back to my desk. I went straight to the control hub and filed a new internal audit under the pre-cleared stability review protocol. Small, quiet, non-urgent. That meant it wouldn't ping anyone senior until it hit scheduling. By then, it'd be too late. I sent invites to 6 people, mid-level security, legal, ethics, finance, and one quiet analyst who owed me a favor. All standard names, except one slot. I left it blank on purpose. The system auto-filled it with the last approved reviewer from a previous file, Colin Graves, former aide to my father, now risk advisory at Langdon Partners. I wanted to see if he'd notice. He did. He showed up 30 minutes early. I walked into the glass conference room and saw him standing by the monitor, pretending to scroll his phone like he was just killing time. Colin, I said. He looked up fast. Kara, I saw the invite, figured I should be here. Didn't want to slow anything down. I nodded. Funny, I didn't send you one? His eyes flickered. I assumed it was a standing review, he said. Wasn't clear. It was clear to everyone else. I stepped around him and tapped the screen. The room lights dimmed. 5 others walked in behind me, quiet. No one said hi. Once we sat, I opened the folder labeled Legacy Financial Chain TRX014B2. Then I hit play. The first clip was old, the original recording from Tunisia, static, dusty air, one man speaking low in a dialect 99% of this building couldn't even identify. I didn't translate. I didn't have to. The tone was enough. Then I played the second clip. It was cleaner, newer, less wind, no background noise. Recorded 2 weeks ago in this building. Same phrasing, same dialect, same voice. The room went still. I turned to the man at the end of the table. Gray suit, tight mouth, polished hands. Admiral Sebastian Roth, former U.S. diplomat, chair of the company's ethics board, and the man whose voice was on both files. Would you like to explain that, Admiral? He didn't blink. That's not admissible, he said. No chain of custody. You recorded it off-site. Actually, I said, tapping the screen, the microphone was located on the 3rd floor server hallway. Authorized maintenance zone. He leaned back, slow. You're playing a dangerous game. No, I said. I'm finishing one. He looked around the table, then back at me. Calm, ice cold. You understand what happens if this escalates. Your father's name gets dragged through committee hearings. Your brother's firm collapses. Half the diplomatic circle goes under audit. I didn't flinch. He leaned forward. You want to take down half the country's infrastructure because of a few signatures? I want the truth. Even if it destroys your family? I didn't answer. I just clicked the recorder. The light turned red again. It blinked. Quiet. Steady. Roth's jaw tightened. Then he stood. If you think this is the end, you're wrong. There are systems that don't break just because someone finally decides to feel brave. He walked out. No one tried to stop him. I turned back to the table. No one spoke. No one looked at me directly. I ended the recording, saved the file under Protocol 7, Integrity Archive, Langdon Cell. Then I encrypted it, sent it to the DIA with one line. Full trace authorized, made a personal copy, uploaded it to a sealed private archive, hidden under an old field ops training log no one had touched in years. Then I closed the screen and walked out, not quietly, not fast, just steady, because I wasn't scared anymore. And I wasn't hiding. The same carpet, the same chandelier, The same damn cold coffee on the back table. I stood at the center of the room now, not the back wall. My badge said advisor, but no one asked questions. They just made room. It was the final day of the summit. Closing remarks, trade policy, risk assessment, security readiness, all the usual lies. My name was last on the list. I didn't carry notes. When they called me forward, I walked to the podium and waited for the room to go still. Then I said 6 words. Classical Arabic, precise, no emotion. The flame remembers who carried water. Silence. No headsets clicked on. No translator spoke. No whispering in the corners. Just stillness. Then a chair scraped back. Dahir Bashir stood. No hesitation. No smile. He raised his right hand, palm flat, and saluted. "She's why your country is still standing," he said in English. "You just didn't know it." The room didn't move. My eyes didn't go to him. They went to the second row, left side. My father, pale, still, watching. He didn't blink, didn't speak, but he nodded. Once, not apology, recognition. That was all I ever wanted from him, and far less than he ever gave. I didn't smile, didn't bow. I stepped away from the podium, walked out of the ballroom with every eye on my back and not one hand raised to stop me. Because they finally understood. I wasn't asking. Later, in a quiet government office 6 blocks from the summit, I logged in and filed one final report, marked closed, not for revenge. For record, the files were safe, the voices recorded, the money traced, and someone didn't die today because I showed up. That was enough. I wasn't just a consultant anymore. I was the one they'd remember, whether they spoke it out loud or not.